Hello, fellow members of the Midnight Society. Welcome back to another episode review from the show Are You Afraid of the Dark? Last time, we covered The Tale of the 13th Floor, a Betty Ann story about a brother and sister who encounter odd happenings on the top floor of their apartment building. Tonight's narrative, from Kiki, is about a teen who discovers a typewriter with supernatural properties. Submitted for the approval of the Midnight Society, I call this Season 2, Episode 5, The Tale of the Dream Machine. We open on the gang at the campfire, with the exception of Kiki. Everyone looks as though they've been waiting for her for a while, and when she arrives, Kristen asks where she was, to which she replies,
"Writing my story."
Two things. Kiki, first, lay off the cigarettes, and second, why were you writing your story when you were supposed to be at the meeting? Is no one aware of when there's a meeting coming up and they are the storyteller? Like, do I have to get everyone day planners? Or night planners? Midnight planners?
Yeah, right.
Betty Ann asks if Kiki is sick, and she confirms that she has laryngitis. Frank puts up his usual tough guy exterior.
Hey, watch it, man.
Sorry, his other tough guy exterior.
Yo, I don't want your germs.
Honestly, I'm on Frank's side here. If you're sick, stay home. As much as the gang appreciates a good scare, I'm sure they'd rather it not be a health scare. And look, I'm sure Kiki just didn't want to disappoint the others, but they'll understand if you're under the weather. Plus, through the miracle of phone technology, you could have rescheduled the meeting. Or, at the very least gotten someone else to sub in and, I don't know, tell the tale about the time you guys buried Eric alive in the woods for being a jerk one too many times. I'm sorry, I can't let that go. I just have all this repressed rage, and now there's no one for me to hate. Kiki breaks out a typewriter. Oh boy, looks like we need another
old-timey history lesson. In the time before computers, when dinosaurs ruled the earth, early man used a typewriter to create a professional document by pressing buttons on this ancient device. Letters would be slapped onto a page using ink, and if you made a mistake, you were stuck with it, unless you possessed a rare elixir known as correction fluid.
Kiki says that she typed her story on the typewriter because her throat is killing her and she doesn't want to tell it. Someone should have stayed home. Kiki hands her story to Gary and asks him if he'll read it for her. Gary's unsure, but he gets some encouragement from Frank.
Just do it!
Gary reads Kiki's preamble, stating that once a story is written on paper, it no longer belongs to the author, but takes on a life of its own. Yeah, I wish that were true about my book. I don't think it can have a life when no one's read it. Kiki's tale begins in a high school English class where the teacher is eating a donut while reading aloud to the class. I'm sorry, what? I want to know where the Midnight Society kids go to school, that they get these ideas for the schools in their stories. I never once in my youth encountered a teacher eating during class. I never even encountered a teacher eating during a college class, and they don't even have the same restrictions that they do at the high school level.
Thank you for coming by. Have a good day. I'm going to go enjoy my wad.
We meet our three main characters in the class. Billy is asleep, Jennifer is bored, and Sean is scribbling in his notebook while thinking about Jennifer. We learn he's crushing on her hard, but she's put him in the friend zone, and when you wear a mustard tie, it's really not hard to figure out why. Come on, Sean. We all saw The Tale of the Final Wish. If you're going to wear a shirt and tie to school, you got to wear a backwards baseball hat with it. For the ladies. Before class lets out, the teacher says that everyone must write a short story of at least 2 pages. As the students are dismissed, I'm left to wonder, what is this artwork on the wall? Are they gangsters? Are they feds? Are they door-to-door salesmen? And why are we painting them from behind? Okay, let's just think about it, right? Okay, suits, hats. They got a mafia vibe. I'm going to say gangsters. They're definitely gangsters, and they're being painted from behind so that you can't identify them. It's pretty smart, actually.
Indeed.
Sean has this little awkward exchange with Jennifer while, I don't know, Kenny G plays in the background.
Oh, man, sorry.
It's okay.
Ow!
We cut to later that day at Sean's house where Billy is teasing Sean about his run-in with Jennifer. Billy also comments on the state of Sean's house. Apparently, Sean's parents bought a money pit of a place that's in pretty bad shape. While attempting to head up to Sean's room in the attic? They encounter a danger sign, and upon seeing the sign, Billy says some famous last words.
How dangerous could it be?
Billy starts heading up the stairs before falling through them, and then the boys discover a secret room under those stairs where I assume the previous homeowner kept his victims.
It rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
They find an article from 1932 about a new novel from late author James Ellington being a spine-tingling masterpiece. Sean assumes he was the person who owned the house before, but if the article was from 1932 and Ellington was already dead, how did he cut out the article and put it in the murder room? The room. And also, are we to assume that the house was then empty for 63 years? Come on, Kiki. You can't blame your lack of understanding about the housing market on laryngitis.
I'm gonna smack you.
Sean finds an old typewriter before Billy reads the rest of the article.
James Ellington, writer and inventor, disappeared in 1931 and was found dead 1 year later.
Again, who cut out the article? Anyway, we cut to Sean's attic bedroom, where Billy says,
A secret room just to hide this?
no, it was to hide bodies. Or at the very least, a small child he was trying to prevent from going to Hogwarts. Billy thinks the typewriter's junk, but Sean is excited to get typing on it. After Billy takes off, Sean begins typing out a story from his notebook, The Halloween Dance. We hear Sean's narration of his story as he types it. Wait, so we're hearing a story narrated by Sean, a character in a story being narrated by Gary, who's telling a story written by Kiki, who's actually a character in a story written by Darren Catania? Am I just a character in a story too? But, nah. Though filled with doubt, Michael decided to ignore his instincts and continue recapping the episode. As Sean types up his story about Jennifer encountering a vampire named Count Sean. Really? Count Sean? His story about Jennifer encountering Sean as a vampire at the school dance, we see that Jennifer is dreaming about what Sean is typing, which means Jennifer goes to bed super early. Anyway, the story ends with Count Sean biting Jennifer on the neck, which causes her to wake up screaming. Typing up one whole page has really taken it out of Sean, and he decides to go to sleep in his clothing by performing this sweet move. Say what you will about the way he dresses, but you know Sean's DTF when he's got a clapper installed.
The clapper lets you turn things on or off from anywhere in the room.
The next day at school, Jennifer gets spooked at seeing Sean and relays to him about her nightmare. Later on, back in Sean's attic bedroom, he's telling Billy about how Jennifer's dream is exactly like what he wrote in his story. Billy thinks it's just a coincidence. Sean then says that he needs to write his story for English and asks if Billy's already written his, to which he says that no, he's more of a last-minute kind of a guy. He then falls asleep on Sean's bed while reading a comic book. I think you need some new friends, Sean. Sean starts typing his new story using his sleeping friend as inspiration. His new story is about Billy sneaking into an old cemetery after dark on a dare to find the grave of Blind Paul. Blind Paul? Okay, Count Sean. Count Sean? One Sean! Two Seans! Three! In the story, Billy finds Paul's headstone, which actually reads Blind Paul. I would have loved to have been at that funeral. Alright, look, I didn't prepare a ukulele or whatever it's called, alright, but I do want to say a few words, okay? Now look, many of you have been asking why we put Blind Paul on his headstone, and there's a very good answer for that, alright? It's because he was blind, okay? I'm gonna miss that guy. Billy starts hearing noises and gets freaked out, but I don't know what you're worrying about. We just established Paul's blind. Anyway, he runs into a cloaked figure and falls backward into a coffin in an open grave. The casket closes, trapping him inside. The cloaked figure starts tossing dirt on the casket, burying Billy alive. As Sean finishes typing his story, Billy wakes up screaming to be let out. Sean then makes the realization that what he's typing is happening in the dreams of the real people he features in his story. That's why you don't use real people in fictional stories, Sean. Amateur.
Okay.
Billy is still having a hard time believing, even though Sean is reading him exactly what he experienced in the dream. When he does finally come around, he makes the connection to the typewriter and why it was hidden. Then Sean says,
Could this be a dream machine?
Yay! Kiki worked the story title into the story. But in all seriousness, do you think that was a Kiki move, or do you think Gary was ad-libbing?
Whoa, yowza!
Rather than put the typewriter back where they found it and forget its existence, Billy reveals that, Well, that he's a psychopath, and immediately starts planning who he can terrorize with it. He then realizes that he has to go home and says the following.
Sean, my man, this is gonna be an amazing adventure.
I wouldn't really consider typing out stories that appear in people's dreams to be an amazing adventure, but I mean, then again, my idea of a good time is making internet videos, so I don't know if I'm really in a place to judge.
Bummer.
Now, since Sean isn't a tool like Billy, he puts the typewriter away, vowing to never use it again. No, he's a teenage virgin with a crush. He immediately starts typing a new story to Mac on Jennifer. In this dream, they're both on a green screen. In the clouds. And he tells her about the typewriter and says that he wants her to call him as soon as she wakes up so that he can test if it's all real. He then kisses her on the cheek, and she kisses him back on the mouth. I know, scandalous. Mouth cooties on a kid's horror show? Gross. When Sean finishes typing the story, Jennifer doesn't call him right away, making him think it was all bogus. Come on, dude. She probably had to look your ass up in the phone book, or call around to find someone who had your number. I kind of got the vibe early on that you two weren't, phone number close. Anyway, she finally does call on his sweet, sweet motorcycle phone. That is the second episode to feature one of those, and I just have to know, where can I get one? The next day, Sean's English teacher is stuffing her face during class again. She tells everyone to turn in their papers. Sean turns in his story about Billy and Blind Paul, and while doing so, we see that the teacher has an entire plate of donuts just chilling on her desk. What the f***, Kiki? Sean brings Jennifer and Billy to his attic room to show them the vampire story. Billy grabs it and starts reading it out loud. As he does, Jennifer and Sean see the typewriter glowing green before they find themselves transported into Sean's story, reliving the events of it as Billy reads it. Just before Sean bites Jennifer, Billy stops reading the story when he realizes that Sean and Jennifer are gone. When he stops reading the story, Sean and Jennifer return to the real world, and they all realize that reading the story makes it come true. And then Sean remembers that he gave his story about Billy to the teacher who can't stop eating. I mean, look, Billy might get lucky and she'll just eat the story. We cut to the high school where the teacher is just about to read Sean's story, but wouldn't you know it, she's eaten all the donuts from earlier and just can't go on without, a snack.
What?
The teens race to the school while the teacher, who can't function without shoveling pastry into her mouth, raids the school kitchen. But hey, at least she had the good sense to bring Sean's story with her, in case she needed a break between meals. Seriously, she grabs an entire tray of baked goods in the kitchen. I don't know on whose behalf I should be more offended, teachers or just people who enjoy pastry in general. The kids make it to the classroom to find that the story is missing. And about that same time, Professor Filler Facehole starts reading the story, but, not without stacking up some carbs for later. Billy vanishes as she begins the story, and Sean asks the dumbest question of the episode.
Think, where would she be?
Think real hard about every class she's ever taught, and you'll find the answer, Sean. The obvious answer to this whole situation would have been to just write another story while they were in Sean's room about the original story getting torched or something, and then read that aloud. Maybe throw in a 30-day fast for the teacher while you're at it.
Of course!
Sean and Jennifer make it to the kitchen, but don't find the teacher. Sean does, however, find some evidence that allows him to play Sherlock Holmes for a moment.
She was here. Come on.
No, I don't buy that. I'm pretty sure she has a no pastry left behind policy. Anyway, Sean and Jennifer continue running through the school trying to find the teacher, and then we get this shot.
The ghost of Blind Paul was creeping closer and closer.
You done gone too far, Kiki. Is nothing sacred to you? Toilet pastry? Are you kidding me? Billy is just about to be buried alive in the story when Sean finally comes to the realization that I mentioned earlier. He jumps on the typewriter, fingering furiously. I don't think that's the correct way to phrase that.
Wait, are we still doing phrasing?
The teacher does finish the story before Sean finishes his.
Billy never found his way out of the graveyard.
I hate this person. I hate the character. I hate the actress that collected a paycheck to bring the character to life. I hate the writer that put this character in Kiki's mind. I hate the fact that I now want to eat pastry while riding a stationary bike.
Sick.
Sean finishes his new story and tells Jennifer to read it.
Typewriter stopped glowing and all the stories ever written on it never came true.
The typewriter disappears and Billy reappears, thankful to be alive. But if all the stories written on it never came true, wouldn't Sean have just, like, altered the space-time continuum? Like, all the people that disappeared as a result wouldn't have, changing history, right? And if the stories never came true, wouldn't that have altered everything that happened in this story? I mean, first off, there would have never been a reason to hide the typewriter, which means Sean would have never found it. But then even if he did, if the stories never came true, then the characters wouldn't have gone on the amazing journey that was a direct result of the stories coming true. And if they never came true, then they never happened. Would people remember that they never happened? Okay, you know what? Now we're getting into Locker 22 territory. Just bring back the teacher to fuel my rage, please.
Is there something I can do for you?
Yeah, I'll tell you what you can do for me. You can... Michael realized the string of expletives he was about to unleash would only make for more editing in post. So instead, he forgot about the episode entirely. Ooh. I feel good. Yeah. What am I doing here? Gary finishes Kiki's story, and everyone realizes that Kiki has disappeared, leaving only her typewriter behind. And they've done this in other episodes, and I have a hard time with it every time. I realize that we, as the viewer, are transported to this mystical land of a story being told, with actors and production value, you know, but they are sitting around a campfire listening to someone tell a story. There is no way someone didn't see little Miss Laryngitis get up, put paper in her typewriter, set the typewriter down in her place, and then sneak off into the woods. It's as implausible as them safely putting out a fire each meeting with just a cup of water. Anyway, Frank reads what's on the paper in the typewriter.
The headless warrior chased down each one of the Midnight Society one by one until they were too tired to run.
Everyone, in typical fashion, gets unrealistically scared and just takes off, leaving Kiki's typewriter behind, which, you know, it's a great gift for any Sasquatches that have just really been looking for the means to write that great Canadian novel. Now for the review. There were things about this episode I loved and things I hated. The concept, which drew inspiration from other stories, is an excellent one. I especially like the added twist that while writing the story, it's a dream, and when it's read, it becomes real. In fact, that had me on edge near the end, wondering if we were going to get one of the darker endings, and you know how I like the messed up endings.
I'm not buying it.
I enjoyed what little backstory we got about the former owner of the typewriter, and honestly, I wish we'd have had a bit more. Like, maybe when things started getting weird with the dreams, Sean revisits the secret room and finds something else that clues him in on the stories becoming real, or just the subtle clue that would help him figure out how to stop the typewriter later, you know? Even just 1 minute taken from Professor Toilet Pastries for some quality backstory or exposition would have gone a long way. The settings were okay. The show never has an issue filming at a real school, so that always feels legitimate. The dream sequences were fine, even if the acting holds them back a bit, but more on that later. I do think the graveyard set was pretty solid. I mean, you could tell the gravestones were fake, but at least it was filmed outside at night or on a very convincing soundstage. The weakest moment for me was the dream sequence in the clouds. It didn't look bad, I think it was the speed at which the clouds were moving in the background. I don't know, it made it really hard for me to focus on the actors.
This isn't real.
The music was the typical campy Are You Afraid of the Dark fare. While it was pretty solid in the dream sequences, it was pretty forgettable everywhere else. Everywhere except that first classroom scene, am I right? The ending of the story is satisfying, even if it does feel slightly anticlimactic. Younger me wouldn't have found this episode scary, but it would have had him wondering if Sean was really a creep, since not only did he write himself kissing Jennifer into the story, but based on the rules of the typewriter, he also wrote her kissing him back into the story as well.
I am Count Sean.
The acting in this episode was okay at best. I wouldn't say anyone was bad, but the problem is the actors really aren't given that much to do. Sean shows little emotion as our protagonist, and that is in part due to the fact that he's mostly writing the stories and not in them. Though, his one appearance as Count Sean was severely lacking. Jennifer isn't really given too much more, but she does get to show some emotion in her dream/nightmare sequences. Billy's probably given the most to work with in the cemetery, but he doesn't quite nail it. His initial reaction just felt rather forced, but I will say his buried alive work is decent.
Let me out, please.
As per usual, parents are absent from this episode, so the only adult actor we have is the teacher, who is billed as Mrs. Dodds. I can't really speak ill of the actor's performance. She didn't do anything bad. I just hated everything about her character with every fiber of my being. So, good job, I guess. Kiki, even though you included the title of your tale in your story, The Tale of the Dream Machine meets the approval of the Midnight Society. What did you all think of Kiki's story? Did you see it as a kid? What were some of your favorite tales from the series? Let me know in the comments below. This tale did remind me that I am a writer, and I wrote a book. And if you're into magic, action, and a sprinkling of zombies, you should check out my book, Novus Arcanum, available in paperback and ebook formats. Links are in the description below. Be sure to check out our next episode about the tale of the Dark Dragon. Until next time, are you afraid of the dark?
Good evening, Jennifer. I am Count Sean.
Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and a share. Be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon to be notified when more Midnight Society episodes go up. And we've got a ton of other cool shows on the channel, so stick around. You might find something else that you like.